So hi, my name is Matt Berg, and I am a productivity specialist at Microsoft. I'm based here out of our Southern California office. Typically cover Office 365, SharePoint, Link Exchange, and our productivity solutions. Been with the company about 12, 13 years. I spent 6 years up in Seattle, up at corporate. Anyone here from Seattle? Okay, good, so I can make fun of it and not offend anyone in the room. Good. Yeah, I just had to get back to SoCal, so I've been back for a couple of years. And I get to be one of the few guys talking about not project today. And so the session title was SharePoint Online and SkyDrive Pro is now the time to move to the cloud. But does anyone know what happened to the name SkyDrive Pro, why I crossed it out? Aditi? OneDrive. Yes, we renamed it to OneDrive, exactly. Aditi, do you want a water bottle or a tablet stand? This is made out of, I think, real platinum. And Olaf will give this to you.
What's the other one?
It's a tablet. It's a little stand for your phone. Yeah, you don't want that. This is, yeah. Great. Good. We're giving stuff away. This is going to be the best rated session. We're going to totally stay on point today. So yeah, what happened to SkyDrive Pro? And I do want to address that today. And by the way, today, hopefully you guys will applaud and cheer. There are going to be some groans. I guarantee that. So, again, typically this happens every so often with large companies. We have to rename something because someone takes claim to the name. The Windows 8 UI, we called it Metro. We now call it Modern because there was another company who had that. There's another company who has the name Sky, and they asked nicely in court for us to not use Sky. Very polite of them. And so we went through a rebranding exercise up at corporate. I used to work up at Corp, and this was kind of neat to be part of these. You know, the engineers and the marketing team and the product group sit down in a room and they go, okay, well, what are words that we want to convey here of sharing? So, one team says, okay, it's drive, it's a space, it's a box for things, it's a site, and it's a place. I said, all right, but we need something in front of that. So they sat down and they said, well, can't use Sky, Cloud, One, that one, single, and X, kind of like X is it could be anything. So they took the top two of both groups, and it was great. They came up with the idea of that. Turns out they couldn't use that. So you guys can groan. And so they went with the next best thing, and that was Plan B, and that was OneDrive for Business. So there you go. So maybe a couple things I'll clarify between the two. OneDrive for Business is what we're going to talk about today, and that is in the business cloud, in the enterprise cloud, part of Office 365. SkyDrive or OneDrive, the consumer version, is free. It's something that you can use today, but it's in the consumer space. So that means it's great for your family and for sharing, but if you put your work files in there, those kind of go with you and they don't really stay at work. So that's kind of a good point of the conversation we're going to cover today. So what are we going to cover? So we'll talk about OneDrive for Business and very specific applications of when you would want to use that and when you wouldn't want to use that. We'll talk about SharePoint Online sites. We're going to talk about SharePoint Online by the numbers. And specifically what I mean is, there are limitations when you put things in someone else's cloud. You can't have unlimited storage. So we'll talk about what that actually means and what those limitations are. So some good stats to jot down. We're going to talk about cloud principles. If you are going to move to the cloud, you can't just do whatever you want. And so we'll talk about what that means when we come to that section. And then we'll talk about next steps, how you get started, how you run a pilot, how you convince the IT department that this is the way to go. I like to have this next slide, what we will not cover, just to kind of be clear and set expectations, and I won't be offended if you leave the room. No marketing fluff today. If you see anything marketing-y, make you more collaborative, better, et cetera, we're going to be very specific, talk about the product today. I'm not a coder, not a developer, so I'm not talking about Visual Basic, Visual Studio, C++, C#, etc. So no app dev. Generally, that's when people walk out of the room or one or two. Good, you have the right audience. I'm not going to be able to cover absolutely everything that's new in SharePoint 2013. So much has changed. I will do my best to give you the highlights of what's new, but if you're on 2010 or 07, technet.com or sharepoint.com is a good place to go. I'm not going to talk about the Super Bowl. I'm not. And then finally, a part that I it's hard for me. I'm not going to talk about why they passed me up to be Microsoft new CEO. It's just not something I want to talk about today. I'm not ready yet. So OneDrive or OneDrive for Business. This is kind of how we summarize it up in a single slide. OneDrive is your personal cloud storage. It's where your personal files are going to be. These are your family budgets. These are your family pictures. My wife and I took our OneDrive and we bumped it up to 150 gigs. I think we pay like $75 for the whole year. We have all of our family pictures there shared across all of our devices. And it's in the public cloud. Well, one, you get what you pay for on the free part, and that means the SLA for public is we do our best, but we don't have an SLA where we pay you back. The enterprise cloud is entirely different. It is all about employee cloud storage. The goal here is to replace your G drive. How many of you have a G drive or a Network X drive at work today? Okay, about 73% of the room. So the goal is to really replace that. Typically when we talk to customers, they say, my priority is to enable our workforce to be mobile. That means wherever they are to get access to their files, and we recognize that might not be on their work PC. So how do we get these on devices like iPads, iPhones, Androids, etc.? The important part, the next bullet point, is that it's managed by the IT department. So what that means is if someone leaves the company, then that data, that connection to SkyDrive Pro or OneDrive for Business goes away. And so that's a really important part to our customers who want better control. And then lastly, it is available both in SharePoint on-premises or SharePoint Online. The biggest caveat is that when you're on your server, SharePoint on-premises, the concept of OneDrive is there, but the problem for your employees is that means there's an expectation for access on iPads and iPhones, et cetera, and that we can't do that. There's no way we're trying to, but be able to go through every brand, every type of firewall and edge network, et cetera. So that's really the tricky part there. So when you put it in the cloud, that gives us the ability to manage. And then also the SLA, Microsoft has an SLA for our cloud. That means if we have a service interruption or disruption that goes beyond a specific percentage of 99.9%, and that's for a month, it's not forever, we don't give you a credit, we actually give you money back. So our goal is for this to never happen, and we never have planned outages. But if there was an interruption that lasted for a month, that means 20 some odd minutes, and is really all you need, then you'll receive a check. And that's really important to us. We want to put our money where our mouth is, and that's how we do it. I'll show you some links later where we show you our exact uptime. For the last 6 quarters, we've been over. We've been at 99.97, 0.98, 0.95, and 0.97, and a few others. But it's been really good. We've exceeded at 99.9, and we'd love to get to a point where our guarantee is 99.99. And I think as the cloud matures and becomes more used, I think you might see that. So why, when I'm out there, when I'm talking to my customers, why are they choosing OneDrive for Business? What's important to them? And these are generally the 4 key tenets that Microsoft customers, our CIOs, our project leaders are saying that are important to them for technology. Devices, cloud, social, and control. Typically when we go develop a brand new product, we get all of our engineers, all of our marketing and product managers up in Seattle in a room together, and they talk and they go over what they probably missed the last version, what they couldn't get into that product. And these were the 4 key tenets that came out as a result of interviews with customers, et cetera. So on the devices, these are some of the things that we offer today in OneDrive for Business. I think we should play a drinking game. You just take a sip of tea or soda every time I slip and say SkyDrive Pro. This is going to be, the SharePoint conference is coming up in March, so that's going to be very interesting to see how many people do that. So today, OneDrive for Business allows you offline access on Windows phones, PCs, Surfaces, iPads, iPhones. We are actively working on 2 new versions, offline support for OS X for Macs and for Androids. So that doesn't mean they're not accessible, it just means you need to leverage your web browser to get to OneDrive for Business today. Again, we're working on it, and apparently the Android people, Google, they don't really like us so much, making it a little difficult. We're working on it, though. On the cloud side, things that have always been important to our customers that we implemented here are the ability to sync files across all devices. By the way, this slide, this is the good, when you go in to make a make an argument to the rest of the company why this is the way to go. This is your slide. These are your talking points. Syncing files across all devices, sharing inside and outside your organization. So that means really removing reliance on email and old FTP sites, and scarily your customer sharing sites. Do you really know how well they're managed? So we'll talk about how you're going to share externally. And single sign-on. Password resets are one of the biggest pains for IT departments today, and if they can eliminate that by having the same password for your computer, for your email, for your Lync, etc., and OneDrive, that's something that's very beneficial. Social is something that has really kind of crept up out of nowhere. It's becoming a very important part for decision makers today. And a lot of that has to do with just the changing of the workforce. Finally, a lot of workers are considering retiring and leaving the workforce. And then you also have a record number, now that the economy has really started to recover, but a record number of young people coming into these larger companies that they might not have done before. A cousin of mine proudly reminded me that she's graduating from college this year, and she was born in 1991. It just reminded me how old I felt. And the scary part, she sees some of the stuff I have around the house, and she's never used a computer not connected to the internet. She's never owned a desktop computer, either a laptop or a tablet. Texting is what you do first. IM is what you do second. And she's almost done with social now. She's already moved on to Snapchat and Instagram. So how do we leverage that? And that's where Yammer comes in. I'm not going to spend time talking about Yammer today. I don't have time in this session, but definitely something to research. That is part of the Office 365 family, and it gives your company the ability to do a private social network. That's a lot like also SharePoint has Newsfeed, which is also social as well. So if you can't get Yammer, you can get that too. The other big part of social as it relates to SkyDrive is that you can share your files in 1 or 2 clicks in social on the SharePoint newsfeed of Yammer. You can automatically get notified of document updates. So now, when I open Internet Explorer, I have MSN for news, and then I've got Yammer. And Yammer is my work news. It's when I see what's going on. There today, it's a really cool day, but there are comments about the new CEO and thoughts going around there. I see some questions on products and SKUs, and sometimes I post questions. But again, how do you talk to this younger generation? Another story there, I was out in Salt Lake City. One of my customers is Franklin Covey. They're known, of course, for their 7 habits for highly effective people. They're old planners, but also they make a lot of money consulting, this business consulting around the world. And the gentlemen all come in, and they're all in suits and ties, and they're about in their 60s. And then a 22-year-old woman walks in and goes, "Don't worry, I'm not in the wrong meeting. I'm the resident millennial for IT." And I thought it was brilliant. It's just such a great attitude. She had just graduated from Utah State, and they brought her in to help them understand what their new workforce is going to look like and work. And she explained that when she started at the company, she said, "So do you guys have some sort of social network? Do we just use Facebook to connect to everyone? How does it work?" And they just look horrified. They're like, "Facebook? Why would you do that?" It's like, "Well, to do my job, I need to ask people questions. I don't know anyone here. How do I know who to ask?" With email, you know who you're sending an email to, or maybe to a group. But if you don't even know the right person, social is the way to go. And I think that's a really nice story of SharePoint Online and SkyDrive Pro. So I like telling that story. Having a resident millennial on a project or in IT is a good idea. And the last big thing, and this is typically from IT, from security, but better control. Having that recycle bin for the oops moment. No one likes going to recover tapes and tape drives. E-discovery is becoming increasingly important, being able to find something for legal reasons, for mergers, acquisitions, etc. Rights management, being able to actually encrypt files so that even if a file were to leave your company and walk away on a USB stick, that file is useless without the proper credentials. And there are a lot of things in the news we've heard of where just simple rights management would have prevented so many of these issues out there. So much, in my opinion, this is totally my opinion, but so many of these breaches and issues we have out there can be protected if there's some sort of governance planning when it comes to data. And then lastly, just access restrictions. Again, too many companies, I think, just open everything up to everybody. And so being able to do that is important. Question, yes?
On the devices you have, like all these devices listed, right? Is there a way, let's say earlier when you mentioned that corporate knows there is a G drive, P drive, that every time they need a cloud, right? If we move them to the cloud OneDrive, right? And then is there any way that they can use OneDrive but still just see that G drive or whatever drive they're using, they don't really get to.
Great question. I'm going to repeat what you asked. What's your name, by the way? Mushi, nice to meet you, Mushi. So the question is, so if we move everyone to SkyDrive Pro, I'm going to paraphrase here. We're probably going to have a revolt or an end user adoption. These end users freak out, where did my G drive go? So can you map a G drive to SkyDrive Pro? Short answer is yes. IT, just with a group policy, can say this particular folder is called your G drive. Over time, you phase the letter out, but you can still map that letter. And really, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll do a demo and I'll show you, but your SkyDrive Pro or OneDrive for Business folder. Is anyone keeping tabs, by the way? Someone start tallying. I think I'm at 7 so far. But basically, it's C:users, my documents, OneDrive for Business is the folder name. And so you just say, give that a letter. So yeah, you can do that. And I have a lot of...
Does it reflect the iPad or whatever?
No, iOS doesn't support letters for drives. So there's definitely some internal brand awareness that you're going to have to work on. Believe it or not, we offer a lot of that on technet.com on how to roll out things to your business and best practices. If you are a company that has a Microsoft account team that you work with, ask them for this stuff as well. All right, SkyDrive Pro in action. I don't want to do screenshots. I actually kind of like to show you the product and show you the demo. So forget this slide. Let's go ahead and jump into a live demonstration. So we'll just jump out of this and go right into the browser. So this is not SkyDrive Pro. Hold on. Let's do the duplicate screen here. There we go. Good. This is SkyDrive Pro. OneDrive for Business. Who corrected me? Oh, Aditi already won something. Sorry. The next person to correct me gets the next water bottle or a tablet stand here. I'm just going to fail this presentation because I can't get the product name right. We just changed it last week. So here in OneDrive, this is what it looks like in the browser. Can anyone tell me what browser I'm using, by the way? Chrome. Don't tell anyone at work. I'm doing this to prove a point. For many, many years, I'd have an audience member say, does that work in Firefox? Does that work on a Mac? And I'd say, yes, but let me show you the 29 things that don't work. And it was a challenging thing. With HTML5 standards, everything works across the board. There were 0 things that don't work. So it's funny now, and I'm going to call out Google, but now they have things that only work in Chrome. And we've become the company that actually works across every browser, including browsers on iPads. Of course, we want you to all get Surfaces, but once your iPads die, you can do that. You can still access all this in your browser. Give them your kids. This is where some people might access OneDrive for Business. Particularly, I don't come here very often. I go directly to my desktop. I've synchronized OneDrive for Business to my computer, and IT can set that up for you as well. How many of you used SharePoint 2010, 2007, 2003 or earlier? Great. How easy is it for you to share a file with someone else? Not easy. You're all pretty used to doing site settings, users and permissions and groups, and then deciding if someone is an editor, a contributor, a designer, or an approver. Those all mean the same thing. So the first thing we needed to fix in SharePoint, by the way, OneDrive for Business, the underlying is still SharePoint. The one thing we had to fix was permissions before doing anything else. So our goal to do that was to make it very easy. So here's a folder I have called Executive Presentations. I click on the lock. I type Invite People. And I type in the person's name. Garth and Allie. Oops. I have 2 options. Edit or View. That's it, because that's all that really matters with Microsoft Office documents. Why did we make this so complicated? That's a whole nother session. So we want them to edit because we want to work together with them. Here you go, guys. And then I have the option to send an email or not. So we're going to share that out. Then I have this one, it reminds me what I've just done. And then notice the icon change, the two people next to each other? That indicates that I've shared that file out. Question over there. Yes, sir?
We share it at the folder level as well.
Great question. The question was, can we share at the folder level as well? The answer is yes. You can share file, folder, document library, site collection. You can go all the way down and all the way up. So great question there. And again, that's OneDrive or SharePoint 8. Here are some other things to kind of point out when it comes to sharing. You have the ability to share a file outside of your organization. We want to make this incredibly easy. Now, that being said, I saw some people get a little nervous. You can turn that off. And so one of my recommendations and a best practice is, by default, when you launch OneDrive and SharePoint, turn off external sharing until you guys have a governance plan of how this works. In the Microsoft OneDrive, when you log in, there's a big yellow box that reminds you that by using OneDrive, you agree to the Microsoft guidelines, and you can click and read that. You know, are mistakes going to happen? Potentially, but it's just as bad as emailing a file to the wrong Bob who auto-populated out of Outlook. So again, we can invite somebody, you know, right over here by simply typing in their name. We're gonna invite Bob Smith at. He works at Northwind. Boom, there he is, and hit share. Now, how would Bob get in here? He just received an email invite. How do I manage that permissions? Anyone want to take a guess? I can put him in Active Directory and make him a user, but then I need to pay for that, right? So that's called just an external user, and we'll talk about how that works in a moment. But this is all through the Microsoft account process. So this is the consumer side. Microsoft account has come a long way. You may remember Windows Live or Passport, and back in the old days I mean 2012 or earlier, we did require you have a Hotmail account or an Outlook or a Live account, and that was incredibly annoying to our customers. Today, we've streamlined the Windows Live ID or the Microsoft account. It asks you your name, verify your age, so you're not like, you know, a 10-year-old that doesn't have permissions, and your email address. You don't have to sign up for marketing or check your favorite box like MSN used to do. It's going to send you an email, verify you are who you say you are, and you're in. So your email address at your company becomes associated with Microsoft as a whole. And then as they interact with other Office 365 customers, then it's easier for them. It's all we're doing. We're not taking any personal information. We're not sharing it. We're just authenticating you. Yes?
Does that mean they don't have a license?
Great question. The question is, does that mean they don't need a license? And the answer is yes. So we give you a certain number of licenses, and I'm not telling you now because I made a really good PowerPoint slide with that number. So we're going to wait until I get there. Took me a long time. So a couple other things about OneDrive and SharePoint is that included in OneDrive is Microsoft Office web apps. The biggest pain I'd run into, and I think Aditi, we've dealt with this before, is I'll send someone a quick spreadsheet and say, here you go. Person opens it up and goes, it's not working. And after 5 emails, we discover I'm on Excel 2013 and they're on Excel 2003. It could be one formula. And the worst is when you do it with Google Docs, but just one formula that can ruin the entire spreadsheet. And when you're sending pricing or licensing or specs to launch a rocket into space, that's the last thing you want to mess up. With OneDrive for Business and SharePoint Online, we've baked in Excel directly into the browser. So no matter what version of Excel they have on their computer, they get to use the Microsoft Excel web app. And this isn't just a spreadsheet. You notice we dropped in a pivot table and a pivot chart. So when I go ahead and I hit Edit Workbook, Edit in the Excel web app, the goal is not some spreadsheet editor, it's actual Microsoft Excel. So when I start updating this data, let's make this number really large, my chart's going to update real time. So now graphs, business intelligence, and things I would do in Excel are all here in the browser. And I challenge you all, when you get your trial later, to find something that you normally do on the desktop that you can't do in the browser. There are some things, but it's getting so close to parity, it's becoming increasingly difficult for people to recognize that. The other thing that I can't do when I'm the only guy on stage is to show you that you can have multiple people in Excel, Word, and PowerPoint at the exact same time. I know this is something Google's done for a long time. We now have it too. So it's funny, in the cloud, sometimes we're playing catch up, and sometimes they're playing catch up, and sometimes Salesforce is playing catch up. It's got to stop saying catch up. And it'll say that 3 other people are in this document. You can see their cursor moving. You can see what box they're working in, but really bringing collaboration down. And we don't all have to be on a PC. We can be on any kind of device that we have there. So we'll just go ahead and we'll jump out the Excel there. Oh, Didi, one thing, you can go back to your team. Someone was emailing me about this. Printing. You can finally print directly from the web apps. We just updated them. That was something we were missing for a while. So again, the Office web apps or Office Online bake directly into your OneDrive site. Now, getting files into SharePoint or OneDrive or SkyDrive in the past was always incredibly painful. And that was, again, browser limitations. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new test document right over here. And now, rather than clicking New Document and uploading a file, I can drag and drop, and notice I did that right with Chrome. There we go. It's telling me that that file is empty because I didn't put anything in there. So drag and drop, that document goes right into your browser. Now here's the other way to do it. You could use it with a browser. Just out of curiosity, does anyone work in a company that has retail? You know, retail companies here today? Okay. You know, typically, a couple of you, great. Typically in retail, when people are only at a computer for a few minutes a day, you're not going to give them an offline copy of Microsoft Office, or they're going to be sharing. So that's where the browser does work really, really well. But if they're on the same computer, what we've done is we've given everyone a little icon in the upper right-hand corner that says Sync. You hit Sync now, and it's going to actually synchronize one time SkyDrive Pro down to the computer. You don't need to do this every single time. It's just that initial synchronization. And this is where then your folder on your computer is going to come up, and I didn't do it for this particular demo, but there would just be a folder right here that says SkyDrive or OneDrive for Business, and it would synchronize between the two. Okay? So that's really how we do it here. Now, if you put 50 gigs of files in your OneDrive, do you want to sync all that to your iPad? No, not unless you bought that really rare 128 gig device. So that's where on mobile devices, it's a little bit different. It's selective syncing. So you pick what folder you want to bring. So typically before going on a trip, before getting on a flight that doesn't have Wi-Fi, which is very rare, it's all the flights to Europe and one Southwest flight that I always get on from Burbank to San Jose. Burbank to Salt Lake City. That's the only plane. But again, you just sync it offline. And what we've also done is, a lot of people don't know this, Microsoft Office is now available for iPhones and for Android phones. Does anyone who knew that? Who knew that? Okay, a couple of people just making that up. So now we've got Microsoft Office, part of iPhone, part of Android phones. We did announce that we will be launching Microsoft Office on the iPad offline shortly. We just want to kind of make sure it's nice and touch-oriented. Of course, we've always had it on Surface, Surface Pro, but that's something we're going to have soon as well. So it's all about taking those files with you wherever you go and making sure your employees have access to it. This is kind of, waving the Microsoft flag here, but notice, these were all uploaded by me, but that little indicator is Lync. How many people use Lync today within the organization? Great, about half. So again, real quick, someone posts something, you can grab them on IM, grab them on Lync, and ask them a question. Coming back to alternatives to OneDrive for Business, I know there are a lot of companies out there who have gone with Box, or more likely, I hear this a lot, they just let the employees do whatever. And that means everyone grabbed a personal Dropbox account. I was speaking to a pharmaceutical company out in San Diego, and the CIO was telling me he needed this yesterday. He got pulled into court. And they got pulled into court for a terminated employee, and I don't know the details. But ultimately, he claimed he had some files. They claimed it wasn't possible. They checked. And sure enough, he had dumped it to a personal Dropbox account. CIO asked Dropbox for access and said, we can't do that. That's not yours. That's Dropbox for Business. You can buy this. But what happened is he goes, can you at least tell me 5, 10 other people in the company with Dropbox? 632. So 632 different people have now spread their files everywhere. And so he learned his lesson, obviously, and more companies are doing this in a bring your own device methodology, but locking things down, picking a single vendor, we hope it's us, to really do file sharing inside and outside of the organization. Any questions on this so far? Yeah.
Going back to Dylan's question regarding to mapping your corporate drive.
A drive letter, yep.
Are there some issues with mapping everything in your drives to OneDrive?
So a couple there are limitations, and we have a whole slide on that. One, we have a limitation on file size. So a 2 gigabyte file is the largest file size you can put in there for now. There's a limit on number of files. I believe it's 5,000. I have to double check. I can't remember right now. And there are also certain file names that don't work. There are certain characters Microsoft doesn't like in files. To get a little too technical, that's because this is all based on SQL in the back end. And Microsoft SQL Server has certain characters where if you put them in your file, SQL thinks you're giving it a command to do something. So we had to block some files. There are vendors or a lot of our implementers that will help you move files to the cloud, do automatic renaming for you. For example, you can't have not a tilde, it's the caret, shift 6 in a file name. So people change that to something else, and you can automate that. So you always want to make sure you're planning appropriately when doing those files. You don't want to rely on end users to do it on their own. Yeah?
What I'm curious about, the OneDrive says SkyDrive and Microsoft.
Yep.
But it's your personal or your my site, it's your OneDrive. So is it your OneDrive or your company?
Good question. Again, this is our branding problem. So it shouldn't say SkyDrive. This tenant hasn't been up. So it would say OneDrive for Business. It says at Microsoft because that's where I work. First, so that's the tricky part of me doing a demo. But yeah, this is My Sites. That's all this is. So if you've used SharePoint in the past and you've used My Sites, this is simply a rebranding of it. So
Doesn't that make the same as personal Dropbox?
no, so that's where just SkyDrive or OneDrive.com. That would be your personal. It looks very different. And what I recommend, what a lot of IT departments will do is they'll just block OneDrive, SkyDrive, Dropbox, block them all, including us, for corporate file storage. Yeah. Good question. Thanks for bringing that up. One of the other things I like, again, one of the things by being in the cloud, again, this is an advantage of being in the cloud, is that we add features all the time, monthly, basically. And today we typically update SharePoint and Project on a 3-year cycle. SharePoint Online and OneDrive are updated monthly, so is Project Online. So the crazy thing is, we have different version numbers that are associated with our years. So for example, SharePoint 2010 was version 14.0. SharePoint 23 is version 15. SharePoint Online is now one full version ahead of SharePoint 2013. It looks similar, but we're the next version. You want to call it 2014? Sure. But we're a full version ahead, and we'll probably be 2 versions ahead before our on-premise version catches up. We just can roll out releases and updates that much faster. And so I wanted to point out 2 updates that we have. One is follow documents. So this is a list of all the documents that I found to be important to me in the company. So collaboration RFI, pricing guidelines, test results, etc. As a result of the files I follow, as a result of the files my peers follow, the system actually gave me suggested documents to follow that might be of interest to me. This could be based on my job, based on Active Directory, what it says I do for work. It could be based on my profile. And then also, this is a great one too, shared with me. So if someone sends me a file and says, Matt, here's a document, this has been shared with you, I delete that email, I'm going to now have a list of every document that was shared with me over a period of time. And that's really powerful if you think about it. Being able to have a single place where people have shared documents to reduce your reliance on email and email attachments. Any questions on that? Great. Oh, yes? Great question. So the question was, and I'm going to paraphrase. Actually, this was water bottle worthy, and I feel like I need to get off stage. So here you go. I like that one. Takes me a long time. At least I'm not in one of those 10,000 person rooms where I have to walk all the way to the back. So related to workflow, remember this is still SharePoint. Just like Project is really based on SharePoint, which means you can completely do any workflow you need to do. So for example, if you want to use Nintex or K2 or AvePoint, any of these workflow tools, you can absolutely integrate those and work with them directly in OneDrive. So yes. And is it the new version of document management? No. But this is just a way, by the way, all your SharePoint settings are hidden, but they're all still there. And workflow is right there. But this is a way to kind of differentiate the files that you're working on versus the file your team's working on. Maybe someone give me an example. This is a good one. This is worth a mouse. When you would use OneDrive versus when you would use SharePoint. Was it going to give you an easy one? Yeah. So you can check in and check out documents in OneDrive. It's off by default. But maybe a situation. Yes?
OneDrive is like your personal document where you want to carry on with you offline. While SharePoint, you bring a group of people who's going to do not only documents, your discussion, your tasks, whole collaboration together.
Great example. I'm going to rephrase that. Congratulations, you got a mouse. So what Mushi said was that OneDrive is where you have your files that you're effectively using offline. They're for you to work on. But in SharePoint is when you're going to have your files, your tasks, your calendar, your discussions, when you're really collaborating with a group of people. Exactly. I think that's a great explanation. So I'll keep files in my OneDrive when I'm just not ready to share them with everybody yet, or I don't have a parking spot for them. But if I'm working on a specific client, if I'm building a specific project, if it's specific for a department like finance or sales or marketing, that's where I put it in my SharePoint site. Great. All right, so let me go back just to, we'll do, let's switch gears. I'm going to switch gears to SharePoint as a whole, SharePoint Online as a whole. We're in demo mode, we might as well stay here, and then we're going to get back to some slides. SharePoint, again, for collaborating in groups, but we've now changed that definition to mean groups inside your company or groups outside of your company. Okay? And so again, we give you a set of licenses or a set of external licenses to collaborate with people. So today, it no longer matters in SharePoint Online if a site's for internal or for external group of people. If you are building tablets and you have people all over the world, you've got Asia or multiple parts of Asia and the United States and Texas and San Francisco, you can create an extranet site. You don't need to work at your company. They'll receive that login, and you guys can all collaborate. And when your project is over, you remove their permissions. You kick them out. There are some great tools so you can have an audit, automatically kick out people after 30 days, automatically encrypt files after a period of time. So let's jump in just to a typical SharePoint site. That's a good one right over there. Apparently I checked it out at some point. We'll just get rid of that yellow box there. So here's the Contoso Northwind Partners extranet site. So this is a typical SharePoint site. Doesn't look very different than Project. Designed for collaborating between two companies. And so users were invited. They got an email inviting them in here. Contoso started it. Northwind was invited. And we did some nice things. We dropped in a PowerPoint slide deck. Again, because PowerPoint, Word, Excel, OneNote are included in SharePoint Online. We did a little business intelligence. We dropped a little key performance indicator. All that's actually doing is pulling data out of a giant Excel spreadsheet. But we're able to see this right there. We've added some nice things in 2013, document rating. We found this a big request from customers. They said, we've got millions of documents. We want our people to tell us which ones are better. And then announcements. If you wanted to drop a project web part, Project Lite, which I saw the big announcement there, directly into one of these sites, that's definitely something you can do. And then to invite other people into your site, sure, that's all you do. And again, if you have external permissions, great. Let's see if we've turned it on for this. Boom, no results found. I don't have permission to share externally, so the goal is to show you the user experience that someone doesn't have external sharing capabilities there. What I recommend you do is you create a ring-fence spot. Extranet site is this group of sites, and this domain or this subdomain of SharePoint, and these are our Collabor intranet sites. So you can do yourcompany.sharepoint.com/extranet and then do subsites, just so there's no real confusion there. So another thing that I think is important, again, based on conversations that I have with customers in SharePoint online. We're going to get and talk about what you can do in online versus on-prem in a little bit, and we'll really get to that initial question of, when does it make sense to go to the cloud? But we can, if we're in the cloud, we're in public, how do we lock down our files? And that's with something called information rights management. So we have two SharePoint plans, Plan 1 and Plan 2, and in our premium plan, we give you rights management. So this is Windows Azure-based authentication. And this is designed to effectively encrypt everything in that particular library. And look at some of these options we have here. Let me zoom in a little bit. 1, do not allow users to upload files that don't support IRM. So maybe it's a third party. We support PDFs, but we don't support a lot of others. Stop restricting access at a certain period of time. So imagine you're doing a product launch, and you can just turn on restrictions on Monday, and the launch is Friday. So you say, turn off the restriction on Friday. It's okay for other people to see that. This is great. You can turn off printing, screen reading, screen captures, and after download, time bomb the document. This is huge. We would not be in this NSA mess if they had this. If a file leaves your company on any device, even by email, that specific file would say, please, what is your username and password? And you would log in. And that person, you'd have evidence that person logged in, and if they are no longer, they don't have permissions or not an Active Directory, it doesn't work. This happens to me all the time. There's one file that I use a lot that's rights managed, and that's our Microsoft Office 2015 and beyond slide deck. You have to be very careful with that deck. And I downloaded it, closed my laptop, ran off, got on a plane, didn't have Wi-Fi, I was on that one flight, and I couldn't open it. And I couldn't open it because I didn't originally authenticate. Now, after you authenticate, then you decide how long they have to verify the credentials. If it's mission critical, you say 0. Every single time you open the file, you're verifying you are who you say you are. Or, if it's kind of important or pretty important, you put an interval there every so often. So, typically, if someone's going to leave your company in sales and go to the competition, this works very nicely. They think they got everything, and they log in, and then they realize it doesn't work. IRM can work with OneDrive for Business and SharePoint Online. Now, to be fair, IRM does work with SharePoint on premises. It's just a little trickier to implement something like that because it requires a server to do all that authentication, which means you struggle getting that IRM on devices that are not PCs or Macs. Any questions on rights management? Yes, in the back. Let's have you speak up, please. Great question. So the question is, can it be by folder or by group? So, what this does, it does get all the way down to the file, but yeah, it's a document library level that you would typically be encrypted. So you can also set up a rule that says, by default, any new site created, turn on IRM, have it ready to go by default. Yeah. Are you going to get some people moaning and groaning? Yeah. Is it worth it? Probably. So let's kind of keep going on what else is new. Something that I think is just underrated is enterprise search in SharePoint Online. Has anyone heard of, or in the past 5 years, heard of the Microsoft Fast Search or implemented that before? Great product, very, very powerful, a pain to implement, incredibly expensive. It's a minimum of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 servers. The Microsoft sales guy likes that. Ridiculously difficult to maintain, balancing the indexes, balancing, doing load balancing. We finally were able to get that technology completely into the cloud. And so that's bringing a search engine company-wide that respects permissions to your company with SharePoint Online. The permissions part is so important. The last thing you want is people searching for things they shouldn't be seeing. What is the CEO's salary? Click. That's probably on a document somewhere. So it's about respecting those permissions. An example that I used at Microsoft was that last summer, I was really getting antsy for the next version of the Xbox. There was no announcement. It was 2 months before the Electronic Expo, and I was convinced there had to be something somewhere. There was search, Xbox next version, blah, blah, blah. Nothing. It's like they weren't even working on it. The day they announced it, Did the same exact search, 200 hits. All they did was turn on permissions so I can see it. The other important thing about search was helping people find things faster. So when you do a search, the goal is that people don't only get the 10 blue links, but actually being able to open up files and see exactly what's inside those documents and visualize them. Another example, when I set up this presentation, I borrowed some content from my other peers at Microsoft. So I go online and I do a search. In the old days, I would go, I'd do a search, and I'd download 5 to 10 different slide decks that were 30 to 75 megabytes in size. And I'd go, oh, garbage, garbage, nope, yes. Now, using enterprise search, I just go ahead and I pick what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a PowerPoint deck. I go to that document. Let me zoom out so we can see this a little better here. I go to this document. I can actually do a sneak preview and take a look of what's inside right there in my browser. So that's a way to really speed up helping people find what they're looking for. Yes?
This be configured so that I can't see the list of documents that I don't have rights to.
So can this be configured to see documents you don't have the rights?
But I
So
don't see them.
that by default, that's how it is.
Okay.
They don't exist to you. Yeah. Good question. Another thing you can do, there's another way of protecting them. You could make it so you can see them, but then you need a request permission to get to the document. That was actually a question your company asked me. Yeah.
So this is in effect your Skype, your OneDrive.
This, we kind of moved on, but this is SharePoint Online. Yeah. So OneDrive, because this is searching my whole company.
You're absolutely right. You moved on.
No worries.
I'm just kidding. So back to the OneDrive question. That would have been your OneDrive thing. If I'm looking to move over my Zen,
Yep.
corporate Zen,
Yep.
I don't want to tag
No, no. So good question. If you're moving over your corporate Z drive or Z drive, as you stated, where in Canada are you from? That's good. Side note, my daughter was playing this spelling app I downloaded on my Windows tablet, and they're going through letters, and then I just heard, "It's not Zed!" And I look, and there's a 3-year-old yelling at the Canadian-built iPad app.
We have the same opposite.
Yes, it's not Z. So basically, when companies want to move a corporate Z drive that's nicely organized, accounting, finance, marketing, engineering, over to SharePoint, typically you'll work with an implementation partner, and you can talk to me offline and we can make some recommendations. And what they'll do for you, there are companies that have been doing this for so long. Collego's actually out of Vancouver, for example. They will do a full mapping, and by default, they'll create a just basic SharePoint site. It's document libraries per subfolder, and just a blank page or an announcements page or a calendar, and you guys plan that out. And then you'll get a nice navigation like you saw in this demo by default too. So that is more work because there's a structure there, but that's how you would do it. Good question. Great. So the other thing too on search is refiner, so you can refine by things in your company, authors, etc. And then people search, expertise search. So again, we were talking about the resident millennial looking for something. This is built into SharePoint and OneDrive by default. Looking for everyone who knows everything about Contoso. Maybe I'm doing some research on engineering. So we do a search and we find Dorina. Maybe I don't know how to spell Dorina. So I meet her in the hallway. She goes, "I'm Dorina." Search. Oh. I was trying to get it to work. I guess that's a bad example. Oh, maybe I turned that off. All right, we'll at least find that. You can turn this on, but it's a phonetical search. International companies like mine, our vice president who runs a lot of our cloud services, his name is Qilu, spelled Q-I. So when you search for C-H-I, he actually comes up in the list. People misspell my last name all the time. So just that phonetical search is just a nice to have right there in SharePoint. The last thing I wanted to show you is e-discovery. Again, this is probably something you won't have to run on your own, but legal really likes this. The ability to have a single portal designed for legal e-discovery, to find things in one place. When you move everything to SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business, you can go ahead and do these searches for certain terms. So we're going to call this Northwind, and we're going to look for certain terms. Northwind, trade, merger, etc. And we're going to put in our start date. I'm fairly certain this happened in January of 2013, and it's Garth we're looking for here. You run that search, and then it's going to come up. And because this is a full Office 365 customer, every email, contact, meeting, IM, and file they ever touched with that term. This is very powerful. It leverages fast search to do that. But this makes things very comfortable for legal and also for IT, who says, you know what? We no longer do these searches. We're not going to go through tapes. Legal department, you can now run your own searches. Have a nice day. So some IT departments say, keep us involved. But having that ability by bringing everything in-house is really powerful. And this is something you can do both in SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint Online. Question? Yeah.
That assumes that you will be using the tool that you were using offsite tools.
Great question, yes. So it implies your data is in SharePoint Online. And so today, that won't search on premises. If you do have eDiscovery on premises, it can search that as well. Yeah. Okay, that was a good question. Here you go. That'll stand your tablets up. All right, so when I say Office 365, we're talking about the whole family. So you can use SharePoint, OneDrive interchangeably here because Office 365 is kind of that high level. So what do you need to know about Office 365? Let's kind of run through the numbers that I was teasing you about a little bit earlier and all these changes we've made. The first is maximum single file. When we launched OneDrive for Business, or it was called SkyDrive at the time, it was 250 megabytes. At this very moment, it's 2 gigs. You should expect Microsoft to increase that. Think of our online services as an annuity. You pay the same amount every month, but we're going to make it better every time. As storage gets cheaper, we're passing that on to you. So keep your eye out for some announcements. I think it's only a matter of time before that goes bigger than 2. Every single one of your employees gets 25 gigs by default. It used to be 7. Before that, it was 250 megs, and before that, it was 50 megabytes. So 50 megs to 25 gigs in 3 years. Again, I think that's something you should expect us to increase one day. I don't have knowledge on that. I'm just telling you what you should expect from my company. Now, the other thing is you can increase that up to 100 gigabytes per user, and that's just by buying additional storage. External vendors, I was hinting at that. At no charge, we give you 10,000 external licenses. That means you can invite 10,000 people who are your partners, who are your vendors, who are your customers to participate. If you need 10,001, contact your Microsoft team. We'll see what we can do. It's not a, it's a supported limit, but I'm sure we can work on something. Yes? It's 10,000 individual people, yeah. And that's per month. So after 1 month, it's a different group of people. As long as you keep it at 10,000, you can swap 5,000 out. That's huge. We used to charge a lot of money for external SharePoint sites. So this is really big too. And again, for light project work, this is great. Ooh, I put in some fun animation there. So people always ask me, well, what's new, what's different, SharePoint Online versus SharePoint On-Prem? The best place to look is technet.com to actually get the service description. But just some things that we brought to SharePoint Online that we didn't have in the last version. Project, site mailboxes, that quick preview, OneDrive, eDiscovery, better workflow, hybrid search. So there are a lot of things here. My slides are going to be available online so you can have these. The goal isn't marketing fluff here, but again, this is just to give you a sneak peek or just an idea of some things we added in one single version of SharePoint Online, and also an idea of how much more we can add there. So a lot of people ask me what are key differences between SharePoint On-Prem and SharePoint Online. They're all technical. Online is on the left, On-Prem is on the right. Business intelligence, we've got in both places. Does anyone use Performance Point? Okay. Performance Point is going away. It's based on this other product we bought called ProClarity. We're still going to continue to support it through our support model. But typically, customers are moving to Excel services. So leveraging Microsoft Excel, Power BI, Power View, Power Pivot. And you can do this completely in the cloud now. Search, you saw fast search in the cloud. There are two very specific things that we don't have yet. One is deep refinement. So that means looking at the exact count of how many items it found. We're working on getting that in. And the ability to kind of enhance relevancy based on your job. With fast search on premises, you can say engineers see one search result and salespeople see another search result. Developers, I won't spend too much time on that, but full trust code, you can't get to the C prompt and install something in SharePoint Online. Admins, again, you've got Recycle Bin, PowerShell. A lot of people like PowerShell for SharePoint. In SharePoint 2013, you have central administration because you determine what's on the hard drives. Public websites, Design Manager, we have an app store, but cross-site scripting is something that you're just not going to be able to do in the cloud. So again, really advanced stuff. E-discovery, records management, all that have completely made it across on-prem and in the cloud. Cloud principles. I want you all to go to the cloud. You might find a reason why you don't want to go to the cloud. We might have some reasons why you should not go to the cloud. And that's what I'd like to cover for the next 5 or 6 minutes. Office 365, SharePoint, and OneDrive are all highly configurable. You can make it look with your like your company theme. You can adjust sizes and space and permissions, but you're not going to be able to do customization. You're not going to be able to buy an app and physically install it. Now, that's not to say you can't get apps. A lot of our big SharePoint developers have apps in the App Store. It's just a different model. But something you bought in 2007 won't work in SharePoint Online. You can mix and match services. Has anyone been part of a Microsoft contract negotiation before? One? Yeah. So on your enterprise agreement, you say, yeah, I need one person who needs this functionality. And that means you actually have to roll it out company-wide because we didn't have a way other than the honor system to track that. SharePoint Online, you can say, these people have version 2 with e-discovery and Excel services. These people on version 1. You guys can mix and match. And lastly, we have the redundant data centers. The idea of needing to get a data center for data redundancy completely goes away. At any given time, does anyone want to guess how many data centers we have in the United States? Yes? 2. It's more. Yes? It's more than 3. 10. It's less than 10.
5.
It's more than 5. I played this game again with my 3-year-old. It's 6. And we're very transparent on where they are. We're not going to give you the exact address, though. California, Washington. That's actually, if you ever come to Seattle, once in a while we offer tours of the Quincy, Washington site. So California, Northern California, Washington, Dallas area, so Texas, Chicago, New York, and Charlotte right now. That means if there were an earthquake in California, fell into the Pacific Ocean, and Las Vegas became beachfront property like Lex Luthor wanted back in the movie Superman 2, your data is fine. It's up and it's running out of one of our other data centers. Our SLA regarding data freshness is just a matter of minutes. So you're in good shape on the SharePoint side, and you're really good shape on email side. All right, so globally redundant, massive network to minimize latency. How many of you have employees in other countries? How about people that travel to other countries? One of the biggest arguments or complaints people have is, I'm traveling and my email is horrendous because of the way the internet works. What we do is we have data centers across the world. We have some in Asia, Singapore. We're building one in Australia. We've got one in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We've got 2 in Europe. We're trying to get one down in South Africa, but we're all over the world. And so if you are traveling, we're not going to make a copy of your data and put it in Asia or Europe. That would be bad for many reasons. But what we are going to do is we're going to recognize that that's where you are, and we're going to drive your connection through that Microsoft data center and then connect you through dark fiber down to your data center where your email is hosted. So it's leveraging a backbone rather than an internet kind of bouncing around to give you faster speeds for making that connection. Multiple compliance standards. If HIPAA or FISMA is important to you, if you have divisions in Europe, they're generally happy with EU model clauses. We actually have armed guards in data centers. I'd love to get a picture one day of one of these guys. But this is kind of where our ask for you comes in. One is we maintain an evergreen service. We're always updating and changing. That means you have to as well. whether it's Project Online, SharePoint Online, or OneDrive. You can't say we're sticking with Internet Explorer 7 and we're never changing. That's not going to work. And you laugh, but this actually happens. It happens in retail a lot where there's just a computer you just can't touch. You have to agree to stay either modern or about N-1. So if you have an application that requires a version of IE, if you have to, use Firefox or Chrome. Can you be on IE 9, 10, or 11? I don't think that's a difficult ask. If you have a vendor who can't get more modern than 2009, you probably should talk to that vendor. But again, you have some flexibility there. If you just can't, I don't recommend going to the cloud yet. We have a platform built on security, privacy, and trust. I'll give you the website. I'll tell it to you now. It's trustoffice365.com, where we have all of the white papers on security and privacy, and we take it very seriously. We don't intermingle your data. There will never be an ad inside Office 365, and we're never going to target you for anything. We also respond to your feedback. You're going to be able to send a smiley in Office 365. You guys can go ahead and aggregate your issues in the admin console through support, but we want to make sure you feel connected to your feedback. So again, web browsers are important, Office client, and older clients. We're not going to block them. We're not going to say, sorry, you don't have access. But if that little wheel is spinning or things just don't look right, that again has to do with the page there. So this is the big question I wanted to get to everyone today. Is the cloud right for you? So I mentioned this before, configurable, not customizable. They're provided under the Microsoft Information Security Policy. Incredibly dry. Your CSO or your VP of security is going to love this document. Many of you who have moved to the cloud have already read that. I just told you where all data centers were. I guarantee you very few other cloud companies are going to tell you that. Oftentimes it's because they outsource. We are going to do auditing on your behalf. You can't just show up at a data center and say, we want to audit you. So we'll provide you the certification reports. If you need a type of certification, let your partner or your Microsoft account team know what's important. Because we can tell you right now if we're certified or not. Our liability is capped. So again, we're going to play honest and fairly. We're never going to say, we're going to give you $10 million if your data is down for 20 minutes. And that's an industry standard. We talked about being an evergreen service. Let me talk about our updates. Because we do these monthly updates where we add features and IT decides if they're going to roll them out. Your end users aren't going to go, where did all the buttons go? We're never going to do the Windows 7 to Windows 8 upgrade automatically for anybody. But what we are going to do is we're going to let you know when those major upgrades come. And you're going to have around 1 year heads up before that happens. And your IT department will then have the ability to hit the postpone button and delay an update. If you're an accounting firm and we tell you your update's April 14th, you're probably going to not be happy. So again, having that flexibility is something that's important to us as well. Online is great, as we talked about. G Drive replacement, get to your files anywhere, share with vendors and partners, implement company-wide search, get rid of your old SharePoint 2007, you're spinning up a new division. Anyone want to take a picture? I see we've got one. I'm just going to wait. Leave it right there. All right, good. Hybrid deployment. I didn't mention this. You don't have to go full on the cloud or full on premises. You can mix and match, and that's another advantage of going with Microsoft. If you need full trust code, maybe you developed your own portal in SharePoint. I'm not going to ask you to throw that away. You still use Performance Point? Keep it. Site collections with specific domain names. Very specific analytics as to where people are searching and for what. Federated search, so multiple search in one spot. And if you just need more time to convince your team to go to the cloud, you can have some of your SharePoint and OneDrive in the cloud and the rest on premises. And if your company has an enterprise agreement, you get dual use rights. That means your online license gives you permission to use Office 365 or SharePoint on premises as well. So next steps. What do you do after coming to my session other than nap and get more snacks? One, set up OneDrive for Business for everyone. Typically, when you move to the cloud, that's the first thing my customers do. They turn on OneDrive. They say, let's just try this out. Pilot a SharePoint extranet with a vendor. Find a good project that has 5, 10, 15 people and start putting things there. See how that works for you. Take that feedback back to your team. Come up with I didn't complete my sentence. I have no idea what that was supposed to mean. Come up with a plan. Mad Libs at Microsoft session here. This is what you get for working on the slide at 10:30 at night on an airplane. A roadmap. Come up with a roadmap for deployment. I like that idea. And then look at some of our enterprise communications that we give you on TechNet, and look at some of our customer success stories. We have hundreds of thousands of customers in SharePoint Online and Office 365 today. I can tell you all about the big guys, the Starbucks, the McDonald's, the Coca-Cola, but on Microsoft.com/case studies, we have the companies that are more your size. And so it's kind of nice to find a big one that just went or a cool one that just went recently, is a company called Wash Laundry. They manage every single coin-operated washing machine in the western United States. Is it sexy? No. Is it really interesting how they operate? Yeah. They've got 500 people who go out there every day and collect quarters. How do they communicate back with Corp? They thought Office 365 and hopefully a Dell tablet will solve that for them. So look at those case studies. Talk to your Microsoft partners about what they can do to help. You can all try OneDrive for Business for free right now. If you just go to Office 365 and set up a full enterprise trial, you get Exchange and SharePoint and all that. Don't worry about that. It's just all included. And just use the OneDrive part. You can do that today. TrustOffice365.com is where you're going to find the technology facts, the security facts, the privacy facts that are very important before making a decision to go to the cloud. Technical stuff, technet.com/SharePoint. We've got our full service description, a breakup of how the SKUs and the licensing works. Read that service description if you're going to make that decision. It's dry, but it helps you understand with checkboxes and a lot of charts what you can do online versus what you can do on premises. The free trial is 30 days. I'm going to tell everyone here a little secret because you came to my session. It's 30 days and 25 users by default. However, if you go into your admin console and you go to support, you file a service request and you say, I haven't completed my evaluation. I need 30 to 60 more days. Within a day, you've just updated your trial. You can go all the way up to 90 before people start trying to figure out what you're doing there. Another thing is, if you do a trial and then it's really good, you don't want to get rid of your data, buy one license for $3 a month. And that keeps it alive before your data doesn't get deleted. And then you have time to invest. Don't put it on your personal card. That's a disaster. But, $3 per user per month is not a bad deal just to get started there. If you are a managed Microsoft account, talk to your Microsoft account team. They can really help you out and even get your pilot set up for you. Any other questions on that? Yes? How long is the project online offers? Is there one? Is it 30 days? No, the project. Oh, excuse me. Fully compatible. I meant the trial offer.
90 days.
It's 90? Perfect. So same tenant. So spin up project, and then just ask that your OneDrive be extended for 90 as well. Good. Yeah, it's very easy. It's the same place. Yeah. Yes, SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business support 44 languages today. Now, it's not going to convert what's in your document, but you can have everyone in your company can view SharePoint and OneDrive in a different language. Today, read into what I'm saying. Today, to get OneDrive for Business, your license is SharePoint Online. It's a minimum of $3, and that's both. You can use one, you can use the other, or both. The SharePoint Online Plan 2 adds e-discovery and just some more advanced search and permissions. That's today. We're going to leave it at that. So, I value my job on making any other announcements. No, $3 per user per month. It's included. $3 includes both. OneDrive and SharePoint, single SKU. I'm not. Things only get better. Just to say, 3 years ago, Office 365, the full plan was $34. Then it was $28. Then it was $20. Just things keep getting down as competition goes up. Great. More data storage. Great question. Here's how data storage works in SharePoint Online. This is worth writing down. Every user gets 25 gigs in SharePoint Online. And then by default, your SharePoint site, your replacement for your Z drive, where your accounting and finance and marketing documents, that's 10 gigabytes we give you as part of that for your tenant. In addition, we give you an extra 500 megabytes or half a gig per person. So what that means is if you're a 1,000 person company and you put 1,000 people in SharePoint Online, in addition to 25 gigs per person, you get 1,000 times 0.5, which is 510 gigabytes for your SharePoint site, and then 25 per user over here. You can buy it. It's 20 cents per gigabyte per month. And that's very competitive in the cloud storage space. That was a very good question. That was a very good question. So, how about a backpack for you? You don't want it. And you're leaving with a bottle and a bag. I forgot I gave you the bottle. Give that to someone else. I don't know. Get out of here. Great. I know this is a little bit of a dry session, especially my humor. It's terrible. Generally, was this a good use? I mean, did you guys learn a little bit today? Good. Again, you're going to run into people who say, this is my favorite line, we don't do cloud. Why don't you do cloud? Because we're at this company. I've gotten every answer. I've gotten oil and gas. We're in retail. We're in finance. We are in hospitality. It's amazing. I get it. I'm not going to challenge anybody on that. What I will do is I'm going to show you another company in your industry that is doing it. And you know what? The biggest thing is law firms, accounting firms, they're getting more comfortable. Microsoft Legal. We're in Office 365. I think we're a pretty high-value target out there. So again, people are going to the cloud. Another argument is, we're never going to the cloud. The whole Salesforce is on salesforce.com, right? Yeah. Where's that data stored? Oh, good point. So again, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or make them upset. But the idea of not going to the cloud, a lot of companies are in the cloud and they don't realize it. And we'd love to ask you to give Microsoft a chance to go to the cloud with us. I hope this was a good use of your time. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.